Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Great.
Good. Okay, so the macaroni grill story. So on the board, every year around the holidays, we get together for dinner, with our spouses. And for the last 2 years, I've been trying to get the group to go to the macaroni grill, and even again this year, it still didn't happen. But Bill has promised me after this talk today that we'll get to go hang out, just the two of us. We'll have lunch. So I'm honored to be here today, and just to tell you a little bit about how I got here. So Bill has asked me a few times, I'd say, over the last couple of years to give the talk, but for those of you who know me, I'm not big on the spotlight. So for whatever reason, I'd say, not ready, not yet, So a couple of weeks ago, he asked me if I would give the talk. And I thought about it, and I said, okay. He said the next time he would be away. So I'm thinking I've got some time. The next day, I got an email from Bill saying, I'm going to be away the last Sunday of the month. Are you ready? So I said yes, and I'm here, and I'm glad to be here. So thank you all. So the topic of my talk today is stop the noise, live life with clarity, focus, and purpose. So as I was contemplating this talk, what came to my mind was sometimes how we feel like we're disconnected from spirit. And even Mary Pat was talking about it. It's like sometimes we feel like, we need to get closer to spirit, reconnect to spirit. I know I've said it, I've heard other people say it. But when you really, really think about it, that's false thinking. That thought suggests that it's even possible to disconnect from spirit. But we are all a part of spirit, the all that is. It's not possible to disconnect. So, what can make us feel like we're separated? Because we truly can feel like we're separated or disconnected from spirit. So what can lead to that? So I'd say our thoughts have a lot to do with that. Our thoughts have a lot to do with us feeling like we're separated from spirit. The truth is, this is an illusion, and it blocks our awareness of spirit's presence. Neale Donald Walsh wrote that it's not to whom God speaks, but who's listening. God is always speaking and always giving guidance. And if you're not present to Spirit's guidance, then the question becomes, what are you listening to? So let's look at a radio as an analogy here. When you're tuning into a specific frequency, trying to get your favorite radio station, sometimes it's crystal clear, you can hear the programming, but every once in a while there's noise or static, and the program doesn't come through clearly, and you start to focus on the noise and the static, right? So what we have to do is learn to tune into the right frequency, turn down that noise. So the same is true for us and in our relationship with spirit. We've got to learn to stop the noise. At the very least, turn down the volume. We may not be able to completely turn it off, but if we can learn to turn it down such that it becomes background noise, it's like tuning it out. It's there, but you're not really focusing on that. Then it becomes possible to actually hear something else, to actually be present to spirit. So let's consider what's in this noise. What is the noise made up of? I would suggest that the noise is made up of thoughts that are, as Bill would say, based in worry, doubt, and fear. Just think about it. Those are the kinds of things that can make you feel disconnected. If you're focusing on those kinds of thoughts, they can make you feel disconnected from spirit. They create the barriers that keep us from being able to listen to spirit. So if you're not experiencing spirit's guidance, again, you want to ask yourself, what am I listening to? What's informing my thoughts? Look closely and think about it. Even think about what are the words that you are using. What are you telling yourself? Are you saying something like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to find a job. Or maybe you're saying, I'm not sure where I'm going to get the money to pay my bills next month. Or what's going to happen? Or if my health, if you're having health challenges, is my health ever going to get better? As you can see, these are the kinds of thoughts that are based in worry, doubt, and fear. And these are the thoughts that can create that illusion of feeling separated from spirit. So I can remember when I was growing up, sisters, and we were playing, we would play a lot, and sometimes we'd make lots of noise, and sometimes if we would get too loud, I'd hear my mother yell out, "Stop all that noise. I can't even hear myself think." Was my mother the only one that said that? I think about that, and it's exactly right. You want to say to yourself sometimes, stop all that noise so I can hear myself think. Sometimes you want to be able to hear the thoughts of spirit, the thoughts that lift you, that make you feel better, that bring you a sense of peace. Those are the thoughts of spirit. That's what we want to learn to focus on, and we want to learn to stop the noise. Deepak Chopra said, God speaks in the spaces between the thoughts. So we have all these automatic thoughts that are spinning in our heads, the chatter we tell ourselves. We're thought-making machines. That's not going to change. But we want to turn down the noise so that we can create more of these spaces between our thoughts. When we create these spaces, we create more openings for spirit to come through. Now, how do we recognize spirit in all of the chatter? How do you begin to distinguish spirit's guidance from the noise? That question points to what I call the power of discernment. Very powerful word. The dictionary definition of discernment is the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend what is obscure, an act of perceiving something. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So sometimes, people think that they know what God is telling them. But you got to be able to distinguish God's guidance from your own thoughts. Sometimes you might hear people say, well, God told me that I'm the best person for the job. I'm better than you are. Therefore, I got to do everything I got to do to make sure I get in that position. But really, is that a thought of spirit? Or is it a thought from their own minds? Because if you kind of look underneath a thought like that, what you got is somebody who's afraid. Or they feel like they have to fight to get what they want. And it doesn't matter who's in their way. But that's not thoughts of spirit. So we've got to learn to distinguish or to discern spirit's guidance from our own noise, our own chatter. So how do we do this? So it takes practice, and one of the ways to do that is through meditation. And Mary Pat pointed to that. That meditation is when we listen to God. We pray, we talk to God. When we meditate, we listen to God. And in meditation, we learn to quiet ourselves and to still those voices and those thoughts in our heads. When we do that, we create more spaces between our thoughts. It's kind of like looking into murky water. At first, it's very cloudy. But then as you begin to still yourself, it starts to dissipate. And there's more clarity. And you can begin to see things that you couldn't see before. But not because they weren't there already. It's because all the noise, all the chatter, all the stuff was just in the way. Right? So we just learn to settle things down, create those spaces, stop the noise. So the more you practice, the more you can experience discernment, such that as you go about your day, the thoughts that are turning left and right, because they will, you can recognize in an instant what I call spirit's interjection. When we talk about spaces between the thoughts, so my experience of it is like spirit actually interjects in between those thoughts. And that thought is different from all the rest. It can bring about a sense of clarity. It can bring about a sense of peace. And it may shift how you're feeling in the moment and change your whole perception of what's going on. So I think I may have shared this once a long time ago, but several years ago, I'd say, well, actually, it was maybe my son is 10 now, so it was a little after he was born. So the first year after I got married, lots of things happened, lots of things, I won't say, he was a little bit of a surprise, wasn't quite the, way it planned it, got married, pregnant very, very soon after, moved from New Jersey to Raleigh, gave up my job, sold a house, bought a new house, so all this happened in just a little over a year, became a stay-at-home mom for a while. So I was learning a lot of things, learning how to be a new wife, learning how to be a new mother, in the process of taking care of everybody else, I kind of started to lose who I was. And I think a lot of other people felt the same thing. So I can remember just, thinking, where am I going to go from here? Just was feeling very lost and, went on for a while. And I remember lying in my bed one morning, just kind of came to, like a boiling point, I'd say. And I went into what I call a spiritual rant with God. I don't understand. Why is this going on? Why can't I figure this out? I'm feeling so lost, the whole 9 yards. And in the midst of all of that was what I called Spirit's interjection. And what I heard, and very clearly heard, was, you are not lost. I know exactly where you are. Listen for the sound of my voice, and I will lead you out of the darkness and into the light. And I will never forget those words. And I can remember just taking a deep breath and exhaling and recognizing that even though I didn't know where I was known. And that everything would be all right. And I went to sleep. So it's a beautiful thing. It was like this whole sense of peace that just washed over me. And I'd say that this is the power of discernment, to be able to recognize in the midst of all the noise and all the chatter, Spirit's guidance coming through. Okay, so we've talked about meditation as one way to turn down the volume and tune up your listening. So there's another way I would suggest that's a good way to practice this, and that is to start to listen, or really listen, to the people in your life. The folks you come in contact with every single day. The more we can truly listen to each other, the more we can learn to listen to Spirit. I used to have this sign-off on my email messages that went, the greatest gift you can give another is your listening. When you listen at a soul level, you can cause another to come to life right before your eyes. Wow. Remember, everybody wants to be heard. And you know what it feels like when you're around someone who really listens to you. Not just listen, but they get you. They understand you. It's like it lifts you, it opens you up. It allows you to just kind of release, to just kind of take a deep breath. And when you're listening to somebody, you can see them light up. You can see them light up. You can see the change in them. Listening creates a very powerful space, and Spirit moves in that space, and wonderful things can happen. So I was searching the internet, and I came across an article written by a Brenda Ewan, and she wrote, listening is a magnetic and strange thing, a creative force. And she goes on to say, when we are listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. And then she says, I have come to think that listening is love. That is very beautiful. Listening is love. But what does it take to listen that way? I think the key is learning to turn down the noise or the volume on your own personal noise. So if you think about it, when you're listening to people, what are you really listening to? You're listening to them, or you're listening to what's going on in your own mind? So I have some distinctions around ways we listen. Call them listener types. So I'm going to share those, and you kind of locate yourself where you might have found yourself over time. So the first listener type is the absent listener. Your body is present, but your mind is somewhere else. So you might find yourself listening to someone, and you may even go through the motions of nodding your head and making sounds like, yeah, right. But you're off thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, what's on your to-do list, all the things about your day. You might find yourself checking in periodically just so you can keep up the pretense of continuing to listen, but then you go right back to what you were thinking about. Now that might happen, if you find yourself listening to somebody who's just going on and on or complaining a lot. So rather than dealing with trying to listen to that person, you'd rather check out. So that's listener type number one. Listener type number two, the judgment listener. You're listening to whether or not you agree or disagree with what they are saying, whether they are right or whether they are wrong. So you're listening to them. You're not listening to them at all, but you're listening to your assessment of what they are saying. You might interrupt them at times, saying, well, that's not true, or I don't agree with that, or yeah, I do agree with that. You're participating in the conversation, but you're not listening to them. You're listening to your own thoughts about what they're saying, your own noise. So that's listener type number two. Sound familiar to anybody? Anybody want to actually confess? No, not at all? Tim, none of these are going to fit for you. No. Some of us are perfect listeners. We get it all the time. Okay. Listener type number three, the rebuttal listener. So you're rehearsing your rebuttal statement in your mind. You are gathering evidence to support your argument. You're going to weed out everything that they might say that doesn't fit your argument, and you will focus only on the things that support your argument. You might even wait patiently until they're done, or you will constantly interrupt with redirects. Yeah, but. Again, there's no listening going on here, only to the noise in your own mind. Listener type number four, the pity party listener. So you're listening to someone who's telling their sad, sad story. They're feeling really bad and they're reliving their story all over again. My mother didn't love me. My dad didn't pay attention to me, or whatever the case may be. And since you are the pity party listener, you join in. You poor, poor thing. That is so terrible. How could they do that to you? And then you start sharing your own sad, sad story. And pretty soon, you're going, everybody's starting to feel really bad. And the person that you were, consoling starts to console you. And now you've got a really great pity party going on. But no listening. No listening whatsoever. Listener type number five, I call the trigger-happy listener. You are listening with your finger on the trigger, ready to shoot. So something the other person says or does triggers something in you, maybe something that happened to you, maybe something that someone said to you somewhere back in your past, and then you're ready to shoot this person that's sitting in front of you, when really it has nothing at all to do with what they're saying, but whatever got triggered in you. You might put that other person's face on this person's face, and then you start interacting with them like it's that person. Take, for example, let's say you're listening to someone talk about how their boyfriend just dumped them. And I learned you can do that on Facebook now by just changing your relationship status. Stop talking to each other anymore. So anyway, you get mad because you start thinking about the boyfriend that dumped you 12 years ago and you're still mad at him. So you pull out your guns and you're ready to shoot. You might even try to go shoot this person's boyfriend just to get back at the one that dumped you. So that's the trigger-happy listener. But again, the question is, what are you really listening to? You're not listening to the person in front of you when you're listening to all the noise that's going on in your own mind. So stop the noise. The noise is the barrier to listening to others, as well as listening to spirit. So practicing listening with the people in our lives creates more listening of spirit and the guidance that is ever present and always there. When we listen, we presence spirit. Remember, listening is love. Spirit is love. So when we listen, I mean truly and authentically listen, spirit is brought into the foreground instead of only in the background, being drowned out by the noise of our own thoughts. So, if listening is love, then let us practice bringing love to our husbands, to our wives, by giving them our listening. We might save more marriages. Practice bringing more love to our children. By giving them our listening, we might lose fewer of them. And even though it might be very challenging, you want to give your listening to the people you don't like, the ones that irritate you. Those are the people who will mirror back to you what you need to see about yourself. A lot less conflict that way. So, just for a moment, just imagine a world where our nation's leaders listen to each other authentically and with the intention to really understand the other side. What if our leaders did more than protect their own nation's self-interest, but believed that serving the best interest of others as well as their own does not have to be mutually exclusive? What kind of world would we live in? Maybe there would be fewer wars. Maybe world peace would become an attainable thing, like heaven right here on earth. And just maybe it is all possible through the power of listening. Because when we listen, truly listen, there is clarity. And when there is clarity, there is focus. And when there is focus, there is purpose. So stop all the noise so you can hear yourself think and focus on your guidance and your purpose. So I want to leave you with a poem that I wrote many years ago, but I think it's fitting today, and it's called The Universe Speaks. Shh. The universe is speaking. Silence. God says, I want to talk to you. Can you listen? There is something for you to do, a purpose for your life today. Be still. Can you feel God moving? Aren't you connected? Aren't all of us? What's your purpose? Did you hear it yet? Is there someone who needs a message today? Is there something you need to do for someone today? Is there something you need to learn so you can teach another? Are you willing to be led by the universe? Led by God? I do believe the universe is speaking to you. Thank you for listening.